So the news is out. Pope Francis has passed away. And almost immediately, this this ancient process kicks into gear over in the Vatican.
It really does. And it's something that captures global attention, doesn't it? It's not just an internal church matter.
Exactly. It ripples outwards, impacting diplomacy, social issues, you name it.
A truly unique transition of power. The traditions are so layered, so complex. And the stakes, well, they're incredibly high for the future.
Right. And that's what we're diving into today. You, our listeners, you've been following this, sending in questions, pointing us to sources about how a new pope actually gets chosen. So today, we're going to unpack that whole fascinating procedure, look at the history, how it works now, the conclave.
Yeah.
Our goal is just to give you a really clear picture of what happens next inside those Vatican walls. And helping us navigate all this is our expert.
It's a pleasure. It's definitely a process that can seem a bit mysterious from the outside, so hopefully we can shed some light on it for you.
Great. Let's start with that word itself. Conclave. It sounds weighty.
It does, and for good reason.
Yeah.
It comes straight from Latin conclavis,
Meaning?
literally with a key, or, locked room.
Oh, okay.
And historically, that was quite literal. They were physically locked in to keep them focused on the election.
So no distraction.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And also, crucially, to limit outside interference.
Mm-hmm.
This period without a pope, the sede vacante, it highlighted problems, governance gaps, secular powers trying to meddle.
Right. A locked room as a deliberate barrier. And you mentioned history. It wasn't always quite this structured, was it?
No, not at all. It evolved over a long time. A really key moment was back in the 13th century with Pope Gregory X.
Okay. What happened there?
Well, his own election took almost 3 years.
3 years.
Yeah, after Pope Clement V died in 1268. Imagine the instability, the power vacuum.
Wow.
So Gregory, once he was finally elected, he laid down rules basically mandating this locked room scenario, trying to prevent those kinds of delays and external pressures.
So it was born out of a really practical, maybe even frustrating experience for him. Efficiency and protection.
That's a good way to put it. And then over the centuries, popes kept tweaking the rules, always hammering on efficiency, and really importantly, secrecy.
Which brings us more up to date.
Right. The main framework we have today comes from Pope John Paul II's 1996 Constitution, Universi Dominici Gregis.
The Lord's whole flock.
That's the one. It lays out the modern process.
And Benedict VI built on that.
He did. He reaffirmed things in 2007 and again in 2013, especially that two-thirds majority needed to win.
Ah, okay.
And also reinforcing the really strict penalties for breaking that oath of secrecy.
That supermajority, that makes sense. You want someone with broad backing, not just scraping by.
Precisely. Avoids electing someone supported by just a narrow faction.
And the secrecy. I remember reading something about an emperor trying to stick his oar in way back when.
Oh yeah, that was Emperor Franz Joseph of Austria back in 1903. He tried to veto the election of Cardinal Rampolla.
Really? How did that go down?
The cardinals basically told him where to go. They rejected the interference outright. It was a pretty powerful statement about the church wanting to choose its own leader,
A clear line in the sand. Okay, so we've got this historic locked room steeped in secrecy. Who are the people actually in the room?
Right. The key players are the members of the College of Cardinals.
Who are they typically?
Bishops.
Mostly, yes. Bishops, often leading major archdioceses around the world, or they might be officials running departments within the Vatican, the Curia. The Pope appoints them. You'd recognize them by their scarlet red robes.
The famous red hats.
Exactly. And when the papacy becomes vacant, the day-to-day governance, in a limited way, falls to this College of Cardinals.
So they're kind of caretakers until the new pope is elected.
Kind of, yeah. They meet in what are called general congregations before the conclave starts.
What happens in those meetings?
They discuss the state of the church, the big challenges, the needs, essentially setting the stage, figuring out what kind of leader is needed now. But certain big papal decisions are put on hold, like appointing new bishops, things like that.
Exactly. That stuff waits. It's the sede vacante period. The see is vacant.
Got it. A sort of pause on major moves. Now, who actually gets to vote inside the conclave? Is it every single cardinal?
No, there's an age limit. Only cardinals who are under 80 years old on the day the papacy becomes vacant can vote. They're the cardinal electors.
Under 80. What about the older ones?
They can still attend those preparatory general congregations, offer their advice, share their wisdom. They just don't get a ballot in the Sistine Chapel.
Interesting. Is there a set number of electors?
There's an intended limit, set by Paul VI, I think, of 120 electors. But, popes sometimes appoint a few more, so the actual number can hover slightly above or below that.
Okay, so roughly 120 voting cardinals. And the timing. How soon after the Pope's passing does this all kick off?
The rules say the conclave should start between 15 and 20 days after the vacancy begins.
Right.
But there's a provision. If all the voting cardinals are already in Rome before 15 days are up, they can actually decide to start earlier.
Ah, so it could be quicker.
Potentially, yes. Of course, the Pope's funeral rites usually happen during that initial period, and that naturally takes precedence.
Of course. A time for mourning first. And the location, everyone knows, the Sistine Chapel.
Iconic, isn't it? It's within the Apostolic Palace, the Pope's official residence, and once the conclave begins, it is sealed completely.
Sealed, like literally locked.
Yes, and swept for bugs, electronic devices jammed. No phones, no internet, no contact with the outside world whatsoever. No cameras, no live feeds. Total lockdown.
A complete information blackout zone. And I guess that oath of secrecy is a huge part of this.
Absolutely fundamental. Before those doors are locked, every single cardinal elector takes a solemn oath. Absolute secrecy about everything that happens inside.
And the penalty for breaking it?
Excommunication. Latae sententiae. Automatic.
Wow. Okay. That's serious. A very powerful motivator to keep quiet.
It really underscores how sacred they view the confidentiality of the process, protecting it from any external influence or pressure.
Okay, so the electors are in the chapel, sealed off, sworn to secrecy. What happens then? How does the voting work?
It's all done by secret ballot. Each cardinal, one by one, walks up towards the front near Michelangelo's Last Judgment fresco.
Mm-hmm.
They say a prayer. Then they place their ballot, which they folded twice, onto a small plate, a paten, and use that to tip it into a chalice. It's very deliberate, very ritualized.
Sounds incredibly solemn, and they vote how often?
The standard rhythm is 4 ballots per day, 2 in the morning session, 2 in the afternoon session.
Okay.
And this continues day after day until someone gets that magic number.
The 2/3 majority.
Exactly. 2/3 of the votes cast.
And what if after a round of voting, no one hits that mark?
Right. So after each ballot, 3 cardinals, called scrutineers, count the votes aloud. They read out the names.
So everyone hears the count?
Yes, within the chapel. The results are recorded. If no one reaches the 2/3, all those ballot papers are gathered up.
And
yes. They're burned in a special stove that's installed near the chapel just for the conclave. And here's the key part. They add specific chemicals to the fire.
to make the smoke black.
Precisely. The black smoke billowing from the chimney tells St. Peter's Square and the world watching, nope, no pope yet.
The signal everyone looks for. So black smoke means try again. What happens when someone does finally get 2/3?
Well, then the whole atmosphere shifts, you can imagine. The dean of the College of Cardinals, the senior cardinal, goes up to the man who was elected.
And asks him.
Yes. He asks 2 crucial questions. First, do you freely accept your canonical election as supreme pontiff? Assuming the answer is accepto, I accept.
Which it almost always is, I assume.
Historically, yes, though refusals have happened centuries ago. Then the second question, by what name do you wish to be called?
And he chooses his papal name right there.
Right there. Then he's taken to a small room off the chapel, sometimes called the Room of Tears.
Why tears?
Because, supposedly, new popes often weep there, overwhelmed by the burden they've just accepted. He's vested in the white papal cassock. They have 3 sizes ready, small, medium, large.
They guess beforehand.
They have options ready. And then comes the moment the world has been waiting for.
The white smoke.
Exactly. The ballots from that final successful vote are burned, this time with chemicals that produce thick white smoke. That's the signal. We have a pope.
That must be an incredible moment in the square. So much anticipation released.
Absolutely. And then, shortly after the white smoke appears, the senior cardinal deacon steps out onto the central balcony of St. Peter's Basilica.
Right now, that's French Cardinal Dominique Momberti.
That's correct. And he makes the famous announcement, Aduntio vobis gaudium magnum, habemus papam.
I announce to you a great joy, we have a pope.
Exactly, followed by the pope's birth name and then his chosen papal name.
The official reveal. And then the man himself appears.
Yes. The new pope then comes out onto that same balcony. He gives his first words to the crowd and then imparts his first blessing, the Urbi et Orbi, to the city of Rome and to the world.
A truly historic moment broadcast globally. What an incredible process. From that locked room to the balcony.
It really is unlike any other election on earth.
Now, we talked about the electors being cardinals under 80, but who can actually be elected pope? Is it possible they could pick someone who isn't even in the room?
Technically, yes. According to church law, canon law, any baptized Catholic man is theoretically eligible.
Any baptized man. So not just a priest or bishop?
Technically, no. He just has to be male and baptized Catholic. If a layman were elected, he'd have to be ordained a bishop immediately.
But does that ever happen?
Practically speaking, no, not in modern times. For many, many centuries, the cardinals have always elected one of their own. The last time someone from outside the College of Cardinals was elected pope was, I believe, Urban VI back in 1378.
Wow. Okay, so while it's a fun bit of trivia, the reality is the next pope will almost certainly be one of those cardinals in the chapel.
Overwhelmingly likely, yes.
So when they're considering their fellow cardinals, what qualities are they looking for? What rises to the top?
Well, it's complex. You're looking for a blend of things. Certainly merit, theological depth, administrative skill. Running the church is a huge operation.
Sure.
A global perspective is vital now. The church is worldwide. And then there's this sort of collegial factor. Someone the other cardinals feel they can work with. Someone who commands respect. Pope John XXIII famously joked about his own appearance, saying the church needed a pastor, not a statue.
Hey, good point. It's not a beauty contest.
Definitely not. It's about leadership, spiritual depth, the ability to guide.
So what bigger picture things are likely weighing on their minds right now as they think about the church's needs?
They'll be considering the church's main priorities. Things like evangelization, spreading the faith. Ongoing reforms, maybe within the Vatican itself. Pastoral concerns, how the church ministers to people's everyday lives.
And finding someone who can maybe bridge divides.
That's huge. Unity is always a major concern. Finding someone who can unite the faithful, who come from so many different cultures and viewpoints. Someone who can navigate really complex modern challenges while staying true to church teaching. Some conclaves in history have been quite divided, reflecting different visions for the church's path forward.
It's an immense weight on their shoulders, choosing that person. Given all this, the secrecy, the stakes, has the process itself faced criticism or debate?
Oh, sure. That strict secrecy is probably the biggest point of discussion.
How so?
Well, supporters say it's absolutely essential. It shields the cardinals from lobbying, from media pressure, from political interference. It lets them deliberate freely, prayerfully, and vote their conscience without worrying about blowback.
Okay, the argument for a protected space.
Right. But critics sometimes question if that level of secrecy is, well, maybe out of step with modern expectations of transparency. Does it create too much room for rumor and speculation? Does locking the doors also lock out broader perspectives from the global church?
That's a fair question. A real tension there between protecting the process and maybe a desire for more openness.
Exactly. And another point sometimes raised is that age limit we talked about.
The under 80 rule for voting.
Yes. Some argue that excluding cardinals over 80 means potentially losing the valuable wisdom and long experience of some very senior churchmen.
Right, sidelining decades of insight, perhaps.
That's the concern. But again, the rationale behind the limit, introduced by Pope Paul VI, was partly to keep the number of electors manageable and perhaps ensure the electors were more actively involved in the current life of the church.
So, arguments on both sides for these rules, but the secrecy especially is defended as crucial for a sincere, unpressured choice.
That's the core argument, yes. Creating the conditions for discernment, for choosing the best leader possible.
Okay, looking ahead now. Whoever walks out onto that balcony as the new pope, they face a pretty daunting inbox, don't they?
That's putting it mildly. The challenges are significant and they're global.
What stands out?
Well, there's the ongoing challenge of secularization in many traditionally Christian parts of the world. How does the church connect with societies where faith plays a smaller public role? There are internal issues, continuing efforts towards financial transparency and reform within the Vatican itself, addressing areas where the number of active Catholics might be declining, and that huge task of fostering unity across 1 billion-plus Catholics worldwide with all their diverse cultures and perspectives.
That unity point seems massive, and balancing tradition with modern life.
Absolutely critical. How do you uphold core church teachings while also showing pastoral sensitivity to people's real lives and struggles today? That's a constant balancing act.
And of course, the abuse crisis.
Yes, the aftermath of the sexual abuse scandals continues to demand attention. The need for decisive action, for transparency, for prioritizing the care and healing of survivors, that remains a profound moral imperative.
Strong ethical leadership needed there, no doubt.
Without question. Then there's navigating the complexities of the Vatican bureaucracy, continuing dialogue with other faiths, and speaking to global crises, things like migration, poverty, climate change, issues Pope Francis was very vocal about.
It's a staggering list, really. The Cardinals choosing the next leader have, well, a monumental task.
They certainly do. The eyes of the Catholic world, and much of the wider world, will be fixed on that chimney atop the Sistine Chapel.
Well, this has been incredibly illuminating. Just to quickly recap the key steps for everyone listening. Pope passes, triggering the seat of vacante. Cardinals gather, first for general meetings, then the electors under 80 enter the locked conclave in the Sistine Chapel.
Right.
Secret ballots 4 times a day. Black smoke for no result, white smoke when someone achieves the two-thirds majority and accepts.
Then the Habemus Papam announcement.
From the balcony, revealing the new pope, who then gives his first blessing. It's this amazing blend of ancient ritual and massive contemporary importance.
A process truly like no other. History, faith, global leadership, all converging.
It really is. And maybe a final thought for you, the listener, to chew on as this unfolds. Thinking about all these challenges we've talked about, unifying a diverse church, tackling ethical crises, navigating a changing world, what single quality do you think will be the most crucial for the next pope? What's the non-negotiable they'll need to lead effectively? Something to ponder while we all watch for that white smoke.